welcome to Lunch Therapy Interview Friday. I've got an incredible guest today. I've got Jeff Shaw on the show. He is an amazing comedian. He's got 2 dry bars. He's got his own comedy special. He also does cruise ships, which I find very interesting as well. It's hilarious. I think you'll find him to be a hilarious comedian. Let's get into this show. This show is called Lunch Therapy. It shows on Tuesdays and Fridays. Fridays we interview amazing, inspiring people, and today is no exception. Hey, Mike Knox, great to see you here. Camila Lopez, hoy. All right, let's get into the show. It's called Lunch Therapy. I'm gonna get myself a modem. 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 All right, Interview Friday here. At the beginning of every show, we take 2 or 3 deep breaths, depending on how much we can handle. Today, we're going to do that with healing vibrations. This is Lunch Therapy. I want to get to the guest today because I think he's going to have a lot to say, and I want to find out a lot of things about him. He's a professional comedian, has been for many, many, many years. He also has a high voice, and he uses it in his comedy to the benefit of all. In through the nose, out through the toes. We're breathing. Hold it. Let it go. Take 3 deep breaths at the beginning of the show to calm our nervous system. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. One more. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Behind me is Healing Vibrations, Travis Schumacher. They have a great YouTube channel where you can enjoy their sound bowls. It's a really good place to calm down if you're feeling kind of stressed out or you have a lot of anxiety going on. It's available to you 24/7. I want to thank the Patreons, and then we're going to get on to the interview here. Patreons. Yes, thank you to all the Patreons out there. Really appreciate you. I couldn't do this show without you. Mike Knox, Todd Lee, Camila Lopez, Liz Lopez, Robert Lopez, Jay Patterson. A lot of these people have been on the show. They're great allies to this show. Neil Phillip, Seth Word, Pam Palmieri, Jason Edelman, and Mary Marks. So thank you for doing that. If anybody wants to contribute to the show, please go to patreon.com/Joel Marshall. Really appreciate it. I want to send out a shout out to Nina Zaragoza, my sister-in-law who's in the hospital. We were visiting her there in New York, just got back. Sending all the love and healing vibrations to her because she's really battling right now. Let's get on to the interview. This is with Jeff Shaw, hilarious comedian. Okay, Jeff Shaw. He's an accomplished stand-up comedian whose first dry bar comedy special, Manly Girly Man, got over 10 million views on Facebook, and whose second dry bar comedy special, The High Voice of Reason, was released in September of 2022. check that out. It's hilarious. Dry Bar, if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's clean comedy. It's a comedy website, and they get all the best comedians. You have to be a really good comedian to get a show on that. And they have a really nice presentation. So you can go to their website, Dry Bar Comedy. Jeff was a linguist in the Army and a former staff writer for American Greetings. And he also was a club manager for Carnival Cruise Line. He also was a former columnist for Cleveland's Scene magazine and Buffalo's Art Voice, and the author of a book called The Fun Dude's Guide to Cruising, a humorous handbook for taking your first cruise and living to complain about it, which is available on Amazon. There's a link in the show notes. Very funny book. Even if you're not thinking about going on a cruise, it's a funny book because the guy is a hilarious comedian. He's a really great joke writer, and he's a terrific stand-up. He opened for Michael Bublé. I got to ask him about that. Again, having clean and clever comedy with a kick is very beneficial in getting jobs out there. Yeah, so anyway, let's get on with this thing. Let's get Jeff on here. This is Lunch Therapy Interview Friday.
My real voice makes me sound like a woman, so I use this manly one instead. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I'm Jane Lynch, and welcome to Hollywood Game Night. You laugh, but I actually had somebody say to me, has anybody ever told you that you look like the actress Jane Lynch? I said, no, just you. Everybody else has been polite enough to just think it.
All right, welcome, Jeff, the Fun Dude Shaw.
Hey, Joel.
Great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to be on the show because I know you're such a busy comedian. I looked at your schedule. It's unbelievable. This is a veteran comedian. So welcome to Lunch Therapy.
Thanks. If I had known you had all these high production values, I would have washed my hair.
Your hair's looking pretty good. We look like twins
Thanks.
today. I don't know what's going on, but it's
I love
cool.
I love that you take your time to meditate a little bit before each show, because I could use it. A friend of mine recently told me that I worry too much.
Yeah.
And then I said, thanks, because you just gave me one more thing to worry about.
I definitely worry too much.
Yeah, he's right. I can be a little high strung, but I have a good reason for that. My spirit animal is Larry David.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is like when you're a well-known comedian, you can be neurotic. In fact, it's charming, but I'm not a famous comedian. That's why everybody wants to share a scene with Larry David and nobody wants to share an Uber with me.
Do you, when you write your comedy, like you have a real great sense of yourself and how you come across. Is that something that you developed over time? Because you set yourself, I just want to say, like you're saying, if you're not a completely famous comedian, but you're a working comedian, you have to kind of establish yourself every time. Is that true?
Yes, especially in today's comedy industry, because when I first started doing comedy in the 80s, if you could do comedy, you were a novelty. You were already considered something special because you could do comedy.
Mm-hmm.
You know how these days they have barkers outside of comedy clubs in big cities,
Yeah.
passing out flyers, trying to get people
Yeah.
into the club to see the show? Back when I started, they were trying to get comedians into the show. They would pull people off the street to go on stage. Back when I started doing comedy, you could have an off week at a club, and the owner would say, I don't know, Jeff, we love you here, but something was off this week. It wasn't like your previous appearances. So Unfortunately, I don't want to bum you out or anything, but I can only give you 14 weeks next year. But now
Yeah.
you can walk off stage and the club owner will say, "Oh my God, where have you been all this time? You are the best comedian we have ever had here. In fact, your show is so amazing. We're going to paint over the murals of Woody Allen, Drew Carey, and Robin Williams, and we're going to paint your face on all of our walls, and we're going to change the name of our club to Jeff's Joke Joint. And before every show, we're going to lead everyone in prayer, chanting your name. That's how amazing you are." And so, what does your 2026 look like?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
We got a couple
you
days, a couple
know,
spots for you then. You can do six
yeah.
minutes.
So when I was first doing comedy, jokes were the end all be all. Being You would go on stage to tell jokes, and people would go to the club to hear jokes. And if you told jokes that were perfectly written, perfectly formatted, and worked and constituted an act, your job as a comedian was done. That time is behind us. That era is gone. Uh, I'm sure there was a time when someone sitting around the campfire with a guitar blew people's brains, a brain wide open, like, oh my God, here's a
Yeah.
guy, he's got a guitar, he's got these strings on it, he's sitting around the fire singing to us live. I mean, the Cowboys probably went nuts when somebody would do that. Now, when you're in a Holiday Inn trying to watch the game, you ask the guy, "Can you tell that idiot with the guitar to turn it down a little bit?" Nobody's impressed. Well,
Mhm.
that's how it is with comedy now. Just like Taylor Swift will impress people, but if you go to a bar in Key West and some guy is doing 6 hours worth of covers, which took him 40 years to learn and perfect, nobody
Yeah.
cares. So that's how
Yeah.
comedy is. Nobody cares that you can tell jokes anymore. So jokes have to be utilitarian. Your act, before you would just learn how to tell jokes and write jokes so you could perform the jokes. Ooh, that
Mhm.
guy tells jokes. Yay. Not anymore. Now your jokes are simply a tool for saying things that you would say anyway.
Mhm.
Now jokes are a tool for saying what you want to say and want to share with mankind. And even if we're defining mankind as 14 drunk people on a Saturday,
Yeah.
uh, that is what your jokes have to do.
So are
Just
you
like,
saying that you have to have something to say besides having funny
yes,
jokes? You have to have something to say, some kind of
right. And you have
message.
to know who you are and what your point of view is. And
Hmm.
so that comes part and parcel with adapting to modern comedy when you're an old road dog like I used to be. So when you're saying you have to have a good sense of yourself,
Hmm.
finding out who you are and finding out what your character is, what your personality is, and how you want to present yourself to an audience. You learn that on the way to having something to say, because you can't have something to say on stage unless you know who you are on stage. So the fact that you can detect in my shows a unique voice, and no pun intended, but
Yeah.
I mean figurative as well as
Yeah.
literally. Like there's only like two other people who sound like me, you and
Mhm.
Tickle Me Elmo. That's it. We're
Yeah, that's
unique.
right.
All right. So so the reason why I have figured out, like, whatever you take away, like, oh, that's Jeff and that joke is Jeff, and
Yeah.
wow, I just watched that special, that's pure Jeff, is because in order to stay relevant and stay booked in today's comedy industry, that's required. So it is something I learned because I had to. And I had a sense of who I was in the very beginning, but it wasn't necessarily to translate that. You know what I mean?
I know
And
what you mean. Yeah.
nowadays, people expect comedy to solve some type of issue. Like, for example, um, it's it's like it used to be. You could talk about going to the airport and say, somebody would say something to you and you'd say something smart back. Okay. Like if you go, I went to Walmart and the person said, do you need any help? I go, you're the one who works at Walmart. You're the one who needs help. Why are you asking
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that's an old school joke, but all you're doing is taking an interaction or a sentence or language and you're twisting it around and using a formula to throw that back at that person. So now you have a punchline that is resulted from a comedic formula. So back, I might have had talked about things that irritated me, and all my jokes might have been motivated or influenced by real experiences.
Yeah.
But the format that I would use wouldn't give the audience any clue as to what I was mad about or what I was trying to say. And so a lot of comics who've been doing comedy for as long as I have, almost 40 years, don't know how to upgrade their act. Like how you have to upgrade a phone to 5G, or you have to upgrade an internet thing for like whatever, high-speed internet so you can do Zoom. The same thing with your act. You have to upgrade your jokes so that they form a purpose. So like for example, using Walmart as an example, 20 years ago, you might go, oh, when I went to Walmart, I see this is dumb, this is idiotic, this is irritating, so I'm going to write a joke about it. But now, what the modern comic has to do is when you walk into Walmart to go shopping, how do you feel about yourself?
Yourself.
Do you feel yourself feeling sorry for the people because they're being taken advantage of, and you would love to be able to boycott Walmart, but you don't make enough money yourself as a comic to sharp a target, so they're screwed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and you can tell somebody who is a modern comic because they're trying to explain why they reacted a certain way in their joke, why they reacted to their girlfriend or boyfriend dumping them, why they were scared about getting married, why they hate to fly. And in the past, all you had to do is come up with a joke.
I love that. It
Example,
makes so much sense. Go ahead. Good example. Yeah.
Here's an example. Here's an old school comedian, Rodney Dangerfield. My wife and I are always arguing about sex and money. She charges too much. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a classic joke and it works perfectly.
Yeah.
All right? And it fits his character. But that didn't happen.
Yeah.
She doesn't charge
it didn't
him
happen. He's
a millionaire comedian.
It's just a standalone joke. It's not a personal experience.
Right, but it also, it's not real. It's based on his ability as a joke writer. Now, take a different joke from a different style of comedian, but still a one-liner comic, Mitch Hedberg. I don't have a girlfriend, but I do know someone who would be very angry if she heard that.
Right. I love that
joke. Now that is still a one-liner.
Yeah.
With short, great twist.
Yeah.
Born of his unique personality. But that joke is basically saying that it's explaining a real dynamic in relationships, that in a lot of relationships, the seriousness of the relationship is more to one person than it is to the other. And two people can be in a relationship where one person thinks that it's not serious and the other person thinks it's the love of their life because they don't discuss these things and they never really have a clear decision on where they're going. So people, when they hear that joke, they don't just laugh because Mitch Hedberg was a great joke writer. They laugh because they're recognizing that dynamic in their own life. Most comedians, like a Kyle Kinane or somebody like that, will take 15-minute, 20 minutes with long stories and act outs to explain that dynamic. Mitch Hedberg, with his style, he did it in that one sentence or the two sentences, a setup and a punchline. So it doesn't matter really if you're going to be doing long pieces with multiple layers of premises and callbacks and act outs and all that stuff, or if you're going to be a one-liner guy. But the reason why Mitch Hedberg was so prominent as a one-liner guy, why Mark Norman and someone like Sam Morrill, these guys, Joe List, guys that are more in today's, in today's comedy, storytellers rule. But Sebastian Maniscalco, Kyle Kinane, and so on and so forth. But the reason why the aforementioned one-liner comics are so relevant today, even like what's his name? The dark guy from had this the special called Caligula, and
Caligula.
Shakespeare. Yeah,
Ah,
and Shakespeare, the dark one-liner guy. Good looking, blonde hair.
God, I don't even know. He does
All
Shakespeare and
right.
Caligula. Wow, I
Yeah,
should
are
know
two
that.
of his album titles.
Oh,
And Thoughts and Prayers is
I'll
one of
get.
his specials.
Okay, I'll get. Let me see.
Yeah, you look it up and I'll finish my
Yeah,
thought.
yeah.
So the reason why these guys are prominent is because the one-liner
Oh,
format,
Jeselnik.
which in oh yeah,
Anthony Jeselnik.
Anthony Jeselnik, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, those jokes like of comics of yesteryear, of the 80s, of the
Hmm.
70s and 80s and early 90s,
Yeah.
because those jokes were so perfectly written, they would hit people the right way that would cause them to laugh and go crazy and just love the art of it. The fact that they could sit there for an hour and hear one joke after another, Stephen Wright, Emo Phillips.
Hmm.
But now that novelty has worn off. So now whenever you hear somebody just doing one-liners, like, here's one of mine that I do anymore. I flew into San Antonio, Texas, and saw the Alamo. No big deal, just a bunch of rental cars in a parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now that's a Twitter joke, but it's not a joke from my act
Hmm.
because all it is a manipulation of language and a twist. It's not saying anything about anything. If I were to talk about 5 minutes how the Alamo, people are either making fun of the fact that people don't respect the history of the Alamo, or people like remember the Alamo, but they don't know anything about the war
Yeah.
that that started it or whatever like that. Then you can go on a whole bit about something that's relevant, that says something about our society, talking about the Alamo. But now, but the reason why Mitch Hedberg was so revered is because he brought the same thrill to a new generation of comedy fans who demand substance.
Mm.
So to come full circle, in order to stay relevant and to even work in the same clubs as all the hot shots of today, and also to survive in the very competitive cruise ship market, I had to learn how to adapt to the new styles of comedy. And I think there's, as you'll see, watching someone like Mark Norman or Sam Morril or Joe List or even like someone like Rich Voss, who is really adapted and has a lot to say. When you see comics today that have that great combination of flawless joke craft, like skilled writers,
Hmm.
combined with a unique outlook on life
Hmm.
and a unique perspective, um, it is so that's like Jim Gaffigan. He's basically one-liner comic with act outs with all his jokes strung together with themes and make it big, pieces,
Hmm.
and so you can see that when those two things are married, it's unstoppable. And one of the issues that I can see with like the difference between late night sets and say the Tonight Show
Yeah.
or Jimmy Kimmel, and then late night sets 30 years ago on Leno, Carson, or say Letterman. Letterman not so much because those comics were more oddballs with more to say. But if you look at say a typical Tonight Show comic in the 80s, it was all amazing jokes. One meticulously crafted joke after another, but about pudding
Yeah.
or rental
Yeah.
cars
Like some topic.
or mother-in-laws.
Yeah.
A great joke about paper bags versus plastic at the
Yeah.
store.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But all amazing jokes
But
about
anybody
going
could
on a
say them.
first date, whatever. So
Anybody could say
there
them.
were
Yeah.
amazingly crafted bits about mundane subjects.
Hmm.
Now we've gone in the opposite direction. You watch the typical Tonight Show set. I'm not talking about a real skilled comic like Wilma, whatever her name was on the other night, or
Hmm.
Joe List or somebody like that. Someone who's been established for 20 years. But But comics who've been doing comedy for 5 to 10 years and of coming up in New York or wherever, and are getting Tonight Show as their first big break, and that's going to propel them to do clubs. A lot of the comics you see today are the opposite end of the spectrum. They're going up on their first Tonight Show talking about things that no one talks about, things you never thought of. Women in hijabs, men of color with, and gay and lesbian comedians and stuff with a whole different perspective and view of life. And they're unique people. They have a unique comedic voice, but their jokes suck because
their joke structure is not
by on that, and to a lot of the comedy industry, what you have to say now is more important than how you say it. So if you have a neat perspective, but you have long-winded setups and your punchlines don't hit, that doesn't seem to be as important. Whereas back in the 80s and early 90s, nobody cared on Leno or Carson or Letterman what you talked about. The jokes had to be amazing.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about the process about that. I want to play a clip.
To me, the best comics are the comics who can marry the two.
Do both. Yeah.
Skilled comedians.
Yeah.
Craftsmen or craftswomen with a unique perspective, and someone who was like one of the first comics that, like, of course, George Carlin was one of those comics. Tim Allen even was one of those comics. And a lot of the comics who made it in the 80s and 90s and got sitcoms, Roseanne Barr, she had that whole domestic goddess, like a housewife with her valid point of view that was unique and spoke to millions and millions of Americans, but her jokes were solid in the old school sense. And that translated beautifully to writing for her for a sitcom.
Okay, I'm going to play something that is indicative of what you're talking about. One of your clips.
Scariest thing about being in my 50s is my parents are in their 70s, which means if I make it to my 70s and my parents make it to their 90s, I could conceivably wind up in the same assisted living facility as my parents. I'd be the only loser in the history of losers to still live at home in a home. My dad would be like, for the love of God, you're pushing 80. When are you going to get a place of your own? Well, according to your nurse, any day now.
It's hilarious, but it's also stuff that people deal with.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. But it's still it's my style. Yeah. And the thing is, when I say you have to have something to say, like, even if it's like, I'm tired of people telling me to have a donut when I don't have a donut, just because you don't have no willpower. Or don't tell me I have to, like, just so you feel better about being a fat bastard. Yeah. All right? That's saying something, but it's about donuts and lazy people. When I say you have to say something, like what I said right there was not groundbreaking, but it was listenable and relatable because I had the two elements, joke writing and something to say. So the thing is, those two things together, you have a decent bit. But what I want to make sure that comics don't misunderstand is when I say you have to have something to say and the joke has to be about something, I mean that literally. I don't mean that in a grand sense. So many comics go out and they try to, like, make big statements about abortion or politics or this, thinking that they're going to save the world. Yeah. There's people in think tanks right now trying to save the world. You're trying to sell beer and chicken wings for the club. Okay?
Yeah. There's some applause for you. Extra applause.
So if you are capable of saying those things, you should only say things that are organic to who you are. Like if you're the kind of person like Louis Black and Louis C.K., they talk about the things that they would talk about anyway. And so a good rule of thumb is, like, what's important to you when you're hanging out with your friends at Denny's, or you're driving in a car someplace with somebody and you're having a conversation, or if you call up a good friend of yours because you're pissed off about something at work. So I tell comics, new comics, like, don't write joke ideas. Write down one sentence statements about how you feel about something that bothers you, something that vexes you, something that irritates you or scares you. And so, like, you shouldn't bother writing jokes about anything you wouldn't express across the table at Denny's to somebody seriously. So today, stand-up comedy should be used to add humor to something you would say anyway.
Anyway.
So many comics, when they go, I want to say something, they'll think of what's the most controversial thing I can say? What's a controversial subject that can make me look
Right,
like
and
I'm
that's why you get a bunch of garbage from people.
Bill
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So no. But the thing is, if you like doing, the only guy that can get away about doing one-liners that are about nothing anymore are two guys, Tom Cotter and Brian Kiley. But the thing is how they look and sound is unique enough, and there's enough uniqueness in who they are and their delivery that they can sell it and that it works. Because there's always variables that are at play. And sometimes variables will work for you and allow you to do things that other people can't get away with and allow you to bend some rules of comedy physics. And other times, the variables will work against you, and then you won't get the same get out of hackdom free card as other people do. You got to work a little harder, so when I say a joke should be about something, like that joke was about me being successful, but because I'm always traveling and my parents needed help, I just give them money for rent and help them with their house instead of having my own house, because then I wouldn't be able to give them any money.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, when I got to tell people I'm living with my parents and I have to explain it.
Yeah.
Well, technically I get the house in the will, so they're living with me.
Yeah, but it's like so based in reality, but you found the humor in it.
So even though my parents needed me to live here so I can help them, and more than just money, just to do things, and because I'm only home a week every few months, and it would be financially, other than having the investment of the property, it just worked out. But the whole thing is I still felt a little bit ashamed or whatever. So I'm talking about that dynamic in that joke, and it's not groundbreaking and it's not anything really unique, but it doesn't have to be unique. It just has to be real enough to take the hokiness off of the joke formulas, because a joke formula without substance is like a peanut butter jelly sandwich without the peanut butter. So you have to have just how they said, like the great line by Mark Twain, the difference between the right word and the wrong word is like the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. When you have a little bit of substance and you're saying something real, whether it's groundbreaking, whether it's mundane thought, as long as it's a real thought, and as long as it's a real opinion, even if it's about the AT&T store, about marshmallow peeps, it doesn't matter. As long as it's is the focus of the joke is a premise and not just manipulation of words or a formula, the joke is going to fit in the context of a modern comedy show. So so you figure out what you want to say first, even if it's just about driving. It doesn't have to, or shopping, but make it a real insight into life about how we behave and how other people behave as human beings. And then you use correct joke writing skills to in service of that thought or premise, and boom, there you go.
So you were a linguist, and also you wrote for American greeting cards. Is this how you learned to write jokes? How did you learn this stuff? And you're obviously a scholar of comedy.
I learned how to. I got hired as a greeting card writer because I'd been a comedian for 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was my comedic skills, my writing portfolio as a comedian that got me the job. I was in '97 when I've been through many turndowns in the comedy industry where clubs were closing and it was hard to make a living as an unknown comic. So like in '94, I decided I was going to learn how to write essays because I was a big fan of like Woody Allen's essays. And then like, Chris Rock and all these comedians, they would put like essay versions of their acts out, like in a book, like, and and Ellen DeGeneres. And I was a big fan of Bob Hope and George Burns books, because they were basically books like essays, And it's basically a joke every single punchline, especially Bob Hope's and George Burns' books. You know, he would talk about his USO trips,
Yeah.
entertaining the troops,
Mm-hmm.
or about his real estate deals, or about his various TV shows, but each sentence would end in a punchline.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I loved that style. And that's what Dave Barry used. I was a big fan of Dave Barry,
Dave Barry,
the
yeah.
former
Yeah.
syndicated
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from the Miami Herald. Now he just writes books.
Yeah.
But so I was a big fan. So I was able to parlay that into a writing career, writing for local newspapers. And I had my own humor albums and writing album reviews and doing feature stories on comedians. I did an interview with Carrot Top and his road crew back in the 90s. I call it Carrot's Top Guns. And I did all kinds of
It really comes out in your book.
Oh yeah, did you like that? Thanks.
I like your book a lot, and you know, I've always wondered about cruise ships and like what the allure is of cruise ships, and so it's an informative book, but it's also super funny. And now I see why that is because you put your comedy, but you also have people that you role models that you enjoy.
Yeah.
I wanted to show that book.
I'm a big fan of that. Any comedian or writer, you should never do more than one sentence without some type of laugh.
Yes, and that's exactly how this book plays too. There's this.
There's my high school graduation picture right there.
Yeah, you're looking good. You're looking good. I like the sailor outfit. Looks good.
Yeah, my nickname for Carnival Cruise Lines was the Fun Dude, and that really caught on. But there was a joke behind that. Everybody on my team, I started off as what they call an entertainment host, an activities host, because I was going to become a cruise director. I got laid off from American Greetings. I worked for them from 2004 to 2006. I got laid off, and it was too late to go back into stand-up comedy. I lost my place in line. So I had worked for Carnival for a couple of years prior to going to work for American Greetings, and I knew a few comedians who had become cruise directors. Or I knew a few cruise directors who had been comedians, more correctly.
Yeah.
And then, so I went to Carnival in 2007 to be a cruise director. When I lost my job at American Greetings, I spent a year being laid off. And then after 6 months, my unemployment ran out, and I couldn't get an interview at American Greetings. And I got turned down, at Hallmark in Kansas City, because they didn't have any openings. And I got turned down after an interview at Andrew McMeel's Publishing, because they went with a college kid who wanted 20 grand less.
Of course.
And I didn't really have the money to move out there anyway, so it didn't work out. And so then I found myself cutting off all my hair, working in a mailroom and a copy center, and then ushering at the comedy club I used to headline at nights. And then that 6 months ushering and helping set up the room for shows and oversee everything about running a show is what helped me become a comedy club manager for Carnival. So when I called up Carnival and said, hey, I'd like to be a cruise director, they said, sure, it takes a few years. Okay, so I was a few years into the program, and on my team, my entertainment team, everybody had some kind of stupid nickname like Dolphin Boy or Big Sexy or Wacky Will or whatever. And so I went on, and they would introduce themselves. And as an experienced comedian, it came as hackneyed and cheesy to me.
Yeah.
And so I naturally decided to make fun of them when it was my turn to go on stage, run out and do a little dance and say, hi, I'm Jeff. Well, Carnival has like Fun Time is like the Fun Times was the name of their little daily program. And then the Fun Time program is what you would put your clock in for work. And then they would say everything's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I was watching in my cabin The Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
And he was, I'm the dude.
Yeah.
And then I'm the dude, man. And I made everybody laugh by going, yeah, well, I work for Carnival. I'm the fun dude, man. And so then everybody started laughing. So I went on stage and did that as my nickname just to make fun of my teammates.
Yeah.
And then people were yelling that out at me the entire cruise. Yeah.
Of course. Now, in your book, you say that the cruise director actually does a little show, Like it's like introduces them to all the things that's going on.
Oh yeah, the cruise directors. Cruise directors have that's why comedians would do well, have done well as cruise directors in the past. I know a few that are still doing it
Yeah.
because cruise directors are not like the entertainment director. Entertainment director is like the administrative head of the entertainment department, but cruise directors are the face of the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dude abides.
dude
Yeah, that
abides.
used to be on like my business card. The fun dude abides. I used to have that on my and that's almost what I called the book, by the way, the fun dude abides. But
Yeah.
um,
Your website is called Jeff the Fun Dude.
it's actually comedianjeffshaw.com.
Oh, it is now.
Is what I use now in all my branding. But that was retro. I didn't want to lose that because I've been using that before, but I don't use that anymore.
Oh, you don't.
I have two URLs for the same website.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody who has my old address to not be able to get to my site.
Yes.
But on all my business cards and everything, it's the comedian Jeff Shaw link.
I love that.
Because I never mentioned the fun dude thing because nobody outside of Carnival knows what that means.
Yeah, and so then you became a comedian. You stopped being the cruise director and just became just a comedian.
I never made it to cruise director.
You never made it there?
It's like 4 years.
Oh.
And so up to 2 years, after 2 years, I was about ready to be promoted to assistant cruise director.
Yeah.
And what was happening was my cruise director had known me as a comedian when I worked for him years prior. So he said, "You're a comedian. Why don't you host all the comedy shows? You're the most qualified to do it." So I would host all the comedy shows. And of course, I remember 10, 15 minutes of my act. And so I would host all of the late night comedy shows in the back lounge. And then I would warm up the crowd and I would police the show, which nobody ever did before, telling people to put away their phones, to be quiet, no heckling, blenders in the pantry, nobody sitting up front if they came in late.
Blenders in the pantry. What? So they don't make noise or something?
Blenders. Blender drinks are the worst thing you can make during a comedy show. So all these things I would do, along with warming up the audience with 10 to 15 minutes of comedy, I got a reputation. And so everybody wanted to work my ship, the Carnivalation out of San Diego. And then one night, a comedian who I've known for almost 40 years forgot his passport in the glove box of his car in the Amtrak parking lot in LA. He got off the train in San Diego, tried to board the ship and realized he didn't have his passport.
Oh no.
A cruise director had me fill in as the headliner that night. I did 25 minutes, destroyed, was a minor celebrity on the ship all week. And he submitted a genuine entertainer review, like if I were a regular comedian.
Yeah.
The front office heard about it, and they were planning to put a new comedy club on their newest ship, like a standalone comedy club. And they go, "Who are we going to get to run it?" And then they saw that I was a former comedian, 2 years of cruise ship experience, just filled in for a comedian. I'm the guy.
Yeah.
And so for 7 years, I helped install the clubs on all the ships. I helped do a lot of the administrative work and come up with a lot of the signage and videos and all kinds of stuff and promotions for the program. I had a hand in recruiting and grooming the comedians. And then every night I would host all the shows and open with 10 to 15 minutes of comedy. I did like over 8,000 shows in like 8 years.
My God.
And whenever a comedian would miss the ship, Carnival would pay me extra to fill in as the headliner. And that happened a lot because I was the guy who told the comedians what time the ship left.
So are you still doing cruise ships? You are, right? I mean,
oh yeah, that's how I make my living.
Yeah.
So after 10 years, I retired and they put me on the roster as an act. So now I work for Carnival, Celebrity, and I just got in with Royal Caribbean. And I have, I've worked for Celebrity and Norwegian. And but with all the other cruise lines, you can work once and not work again for another couple of years. They don't use a lot of comedians.
Yeah.
But Carnival has a comedy club on every single ship, and they use like anywhere from 2 to 6 to 8 comedians every week on each ship.
Do you have to have a clean act and a filthy act, or is it all clean?
Yeah. Well, you have to have something that you can call a filthy act, but you're always you're in danger. Even if you were to do your clean act in the dirty act, you're still in danger of being accused of being too dirty.
Okay.
So it's like, I remember one time I did they said it's an adult show. You got to do an adult show tomorrow. And I go, well, how adult? They go, oh, well, don't swear and don't talk about sex. And I go,
It's adult.
I go, then how can you call it adult show? I go, because it said, and he actually said to me, because it says so on the schedule.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting because you have a section in your book where you talk about being a comedian, and a lot of it is about hecklers and people. I mean, I wish we could read this because it's hilarious. But you talk about the trials and tribulations of being a comic, essentially, and that there's sometimes often a very drunk person that thinks they're the comedian trying to tell the jokes.
Yeah, well, everybody has to deal with that. But but the thing is, here's the deal with cruise ships. Okay, you have to be so many comedians like who can't get booked on land, like middle acts and openers.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can't get booked in comedy clubs. I'll try ships.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be a headliner in ships. In clubs for 10 years before you can tackle cruise ships. Cruise ships are very difficult. Here's why. First of all, except for Carnival, the most of the other cruise lines, non-Carnival cruise lines, the basic requirement is 2 different 45-minute shows. One squeaky clean, and then one adult, but not very graphic or whatever. It depends. And then you do the clean show in 2 seatings, like 7 and 9. Then a couple of days later, you do the adult show, completely different material, no overlapping material, like a 7 and a 9. Okay, and then you're on the cruise the rest of the day, just either working or relaxing or doing whatever you want. But you can get rusty because you're not performing enough. When you work for Carnival, you are contracted to do 5 shows, 2 PG and 3 R-rated. And the basic requirement is that 2 of those shows are different. You have a PG show and you repeat that on another night or the same night at a different time. And then you have a PG show, an R-rated show, which you repeat the same night or the next night. And then you have a third show, which is a second set of adult rated material. And then they have the XL class ships, which are these huge ocean liners, and you do like double. You do 10 shows, and you get paid for 2 segments in 1 segment. And sometimes they want you to do another show, which is like a 15-minute show in the theater. But most of the ships that I go to, I have 5 different half hours.
Yeah.
And because sometimes I do like these ships where I'm on for 5 days, 6 days, and there's just 1 set of comics. So they'll put guys on there that can do the different shows. So you have to do 5 different half-hour shows with no overlapping material, and you have no opening act, and you've got a good-hearted, well-intentioned host, usually from another country, who's still learning to speak English, who doesn't know anything about hosting a show. And then when they dig a hole for you, and make it harder for you to start your show, they sit in the back smugly grading you for filling in the hole. So like you have to go slow or talk to the crowd or take it easy or lay off the punchline so people get to know you because they got the audience agitated or upset or rowdy. So you got to calm them down. And then they're going, well, how come you didn't go right into your act? Because you had people shouting the moment I went on because you had them twerking and doing the electric slide and yelling the F word every time you ask them what state they're from. You know what I mean? So you're dealing with that kind of monkey business. So on one hand, you have to learn how to play the horrible crowds. Then you have to know how not to ruin a show with a great crowd because you didn't expect a great crowd. And so now you have to because the worst thing you can do is have a hot audience that is ready to love you. And last night you had a really rough crowd. And so you get ready in that mode. You have to go up there and make split-second decisions on how to play it. You have to know when to do crowd work, when to stick to your material, when to go fast, when to go slow, when to ignore people, when someone says something to bring them into the show and make it about them. And all this is without the benefit of any show in front of you, no competent opening act, and no warm-up. And they expect you to start with an applause break and end with an applause break. They expect every joke you do to kill. And I know how to do that, but it's
Yeah.
taking years and years and
Years.
years.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as B material on a cruise ship. It's
Yeah.
all, you have to have all A material in every one of your shows. And sometimes it'll be received like A material, and other times it'll be received like you're speaking Esperanto.
Where do you try out your comedy then if you're doing cruise ships all the time?
In clubs and open mics
Yeah.
and things like that.
So
And
you
then
still.
you can always add to bits and squeeze in a new line.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know, like if you're adding lines to a bit, then you put it between two surefire or whatever, and then if it doesn't work, you just gloss over it. But you
Wow.
can't go up and try 5 minutes of new unrelated material on a ship.
So
You know,
interesting.
that's why I'll still work clubs. But
Yeah.
now, when you work clubs, because they have so many comedians, it's hard to try out material, because even if you're working a club for $500 and
Yeah.
you're losing out almost 2-3 grand because you didn't take a ship that week,
Hmm.
it's still like you really can't just work out, because they don't give a crap how much they're paying you. They pay everybody that. They got 300, 500 comics. So the pressure's always on to do well. So I do a lot of like the locally produced shows and open mics and bar shows, and that's where I try out a lot of my material. But I'll try out a few lines on the ships, and then much more jokes in a club. But the only place I'll go up and with a notebook and try 5 minutes of material is in a bar show or an open mic locally.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, we're running out of time, but I want to ask you one other thing. What about these dry bar shows, and how did you get involved with that? Because a lot of people are really interested in getting a dry bar show, and I know.
That's a good question, because also too, it's um like I have like I would still like to do the Tonight Show,
Mhm.
you know, or Colbert or Jimmy Kimmel, and the acquaintance of mine, don't really know him well enough to call a friend, but we're friendly and we hang out. Um, Nick Griffin just did a Tonight Show recently,
Mhm.
and you know, people say, "Oh, the Tonight Show doesn't mean anything anymore."
Yeah.
Well, Biden could tell you that being president doesn't mean anything anymore.
It
I mean, nothing means anything, especially if
means
someone
something
puts a
to
bullet in your
you,
head at
then it
the
means
ATM.
something.
Especially if someone puts a bullet in your head at the ATM and you're a vegetable for the rest of your life. Nothing means nothing. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So
yeah,
I would love to do a Tonight Show, and
yeah,
having two dry bar specials mean a lot to me,
yeah.
and I'm proud of them. But one
Yes.
thing is now is dry bar specials are ubiquitous.
Hmm.
They're everywhere, and it seems like everybody has done one. So it's at the point now where nobody says, "Send me a video." They go, "Send me your dry bar."
I see. So
You
that's
know what
like
I mean?
it is, but that's like a standard though. Like if you
Right, but
don't
the
have
thing
one,
is, it used to be like a booker could care less if I have two dry bars. If they want to
yeah,
know, do I have 10 million? Who cares if they saw my special 10 million times? Do I have 10 million followers?
yeah, yeah.
So everything has changed these days. It's all about social media and how many followers you have.
Hmm.
But most people are using high quality videos to get their followers. And right now, there is no better, in my opinion, place to get a special if you're not like a known comedian
Hmm.
than from Dry Bar. And they're based out of Provo, Utah. There's a company called Angel Productions. They started off as like a Christian entertainment network, and they've produced some movies like The Sound of Silence, whatever that one action movie is about,
Hmm.
you know, the pedo ring or whatever the heck that was. And
Hmm.
then but they were looking for, when they started, to come up with some low cost entertainment,
Hmm.
some content for
Yeah,
their website. And so they
yeah.
decided that there was a need in the market for clean comedy.
Hmm.
And now Dry Bar is a unique brand, because you get to see up and coming comedians, but also comedians like me who have been around the block but never really made it,
Hmm.
but are skilled and good comics.
Hmm.
And they're putting out so much great content every week. It's like it's unreal.
Yeah.
And So they're always looking, it's like I have two specials, yet I've only been booked in their chain of comedy clubs once,
Mm.
and
They
they're
have a
great
chain of
specials.
comedy clubs too.
Yeah, called Wise Guys.
Ah.
They're up in oh, hey, thanks, Mike. Yeah, it's you found it. It's the
You
Fun
bought the
Guys
book.
dude.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. But yeah,
cool.
that was the whole idea behind that book was to do like a Dave Barry treatment of cruising,
Yeah, and you did it. You really were
punchline every
successful.
sentence.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of the drive, and my second one, I'm proud of how it came out because um, it's just now that doing 2 or 3 dry bars is becoming a popular thing.
Mhm.
But when I taped mine in March of 21, the second one,
Mhm.
and it was still during COVID.
Mhm.
And so my first one was in front of sold out crowds, got standing ovations, destroyed, hot crowds because nobody drinks. They don't allow alcohol in the building.
Yeah.
It's a Mormon enterprise, so it's like in a Mormon town. So they have candy and soft drinks and everything.
Mhm.
And I destroyed.
Yeah.
The second time they were giving guys like me a second special because they were shooting under very difficult um, COVID influenced conditions, like 25 people in the audience, everybody wearing masks.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so they like to have somebody who's done it before, so the pressure's off on us. And then we can go up first and show the new comics how it's done and how the taping works, but then also see us using our previous experience of how to deal with these crowds. So even though I don't know if the reception sounds as good on my second, but I'm very proud that I did a good
Yeah.
job because it was so difficult. It was so difficult that the second show I taped that night, um, the host forgot to tell the audience that it was okay to take their masks off once they were seated.
Yeah. Oh
So
my
I did my
gosh.
second show, everyone wearing their mask, and I didn't get one laugh.
Oh,
And,
so
and then
hard.
I told them what happened, and then it was okay for
Yeah.
the other comedians. Another reason why
Yeah.
they wanted me to go first. So what happened is I knew it wasn't my fault,
Yeah.
and I already had the first show in the can, which wasn't a barnstormer like my previous special, but I did an okay job considering I had very little time to prepare the set
I
and to
thought it
work
was
the set
great.
out because most of the
Yeah.
clubs in the country were closed. That's
Yeah.
another reason why doing that special was so difficult. So I show up there with minimum practice, minimum rehearsal, just a few gigs I was able to do to run the set. And then so that show, the second not taping of my second dry bar, it was stone silence. It was like the weirdest thing.
Oh
Nobody was
my
booing me, but
gosh.
everybody had the
Yeah.
mask on and they're all like
It's,
they're watching it on their phone.
oh
So what I
no.
did is I told myself that I know that this is one instance in my career where it's not about the audience laughing. It's about the camera on me and, and what I'm saying. So
Mhm.
what I did is I just adjusted my timing and pretended like I was destroying. And
Yeah.
I got more accolades from the other comedians and staff after that show than I've ever had. They were
Wow.
amazed because on video it came across amazing. Now they were able to fly any pieces of material from that second taping over to the first one if there are any mistakes
Yeah.
because I didn't panic and I just kind of like Sully landing the plane on the Hudson. I knew what was going on and I played for the cameras.
Well, I mean, you have so much experience, especially with the cruise lines. Like you could play any place, and
Yeah,
it's
and
you're not
that's another
asking
thing.
the audience permission to be a hilarious comedian.
That's
They're
another
either
thing
going to
about
enjoy
the
it or
cruise.
not.
Yeah, that's another thing about the cruise line. See,
Yeah.
I like playing corporate gigs where everyone's wearing a sweater around their neck and I have to be really clean and avoid all the subjects,
Yeah.
And I like playing biker bars where there's
Yeah.
a dartboard behind me,
Yeah.
and I play whatever I want. And sometimes I got to get down and dirty.
Mhm.
But that's when you play cruise lines, for the most part in Carnival, the PG show has to be squeaky clean, but it can be PG-13, especially when there's not a lot of kids. There's
Mhm.
more kids in the summertime and the spring. Then you got to be more G than PG-13. But
Mhm.
when it's like in the fall and the winter, and as long as it's not Christmas, it could be PG-13, just no swearing.
Mhm.
But the adult shows, you can say whatever you want. It has to be good comedy. And so many comics who aren't experienced will go on, but they're dirty, but they don't have the jokes to back it up. And that's where the
Mhm.
complaints are generated. It makes it harder for good acts. That's why it's very difficult when gatekeepers don't know the difference between somebody who's been doing comedy for 20 years and 2 years. And one of the things that makes playing cruise ships so difficult, make it like like how they got black diamond runs, on ski resorts.
Yeah.
What makes cruise ships a black diamond gig is, one, you are expected to perform for a very diverse demographic of guests, all sitting next to each other. You look down in the front row, you got some guy with his MAGA hat. You got a redneck with his Leonard Skinner t-shirt.
Yeah.
You got an emo kid with purple hair. You got black folks dressed in their Sunday best. You got black folks dressed like gangster rappers. You got folks with the yarmulkes on. You got Mennonites with their little, bonnets on, looking at the lights, thinking they're going to go to hell. You got in the PG shows, you have 4-year-olds staring at you. You got 12-year-olds fascinated that they're seeing comedy, and 14-year-olds that are bored. You're as dorky as my dad.
Oh my God, yeah.
And you have to make all those people laugh at the same time. And
Amazing.
so the tall order is, your act has to be universal enough to keep all these different people from different walks of life, different age groups, different ethnicities, different religious backgrounds, make them all laugh at the same time and not offend them, yet at the same time be unique and original enough that the people grading you aren't rolling their eyes going, oh God, I got to hear that joke again.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is you establish yourself and you have such a knowledge of yourself and how you're coming across that because I've noticed this a lot of times with comedians, especially people that are not pros like you, is they think they're coming across one way and they try to address it that way, and the audience doesn't know what they're talking about.
Right.
But you really establish that and then you take them through it.
Thanks.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, cruise ships. Now I want to tell you the good thing. You said, why are cruise ships attractive? Well, because they're the only gigs that pay anymore if you're not a draw.
Yeah.
You can make way more in a comedy club on a Sunday night if you're Mark Norman than you would on a month of cruises. But not everybody can draw to do one night in a big name comedy club and make 10 grand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for an unknown comic like me, who, I have an active social media, I put all the videos up to everything, put funny posts, I do these podcasts.
That's how I found you. That's how I found you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I do all that stuff, but for whatever reason, I haven't gone viral yet or broken, whatever. But the thing is I could be a great comic, but when I go and work on the cruise ships, and until I become a draw, in a weekend club, I'm only going to make anywhere from $800 to $2,000, depending on the club. And then I have to pay for my airfare.
Yeah.
I have to, sometimes you have to pay for your hotel. And you got to get a rental car.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. They'll pick you up, but I want to go sightseeing, or it's not worth going to someplace.
Yeah.
So, but when you're on a cruise ship, you get reimbursed for every single expense from door to port. So like I take an Uber, I'll either park in the parking garage at the Cleveland airport, or if my car is going to be sitting there too long and I want my family to be able to borrow it if they need to. If it's less than a week, I'll drive and they'll reimburse me for parking. If I'm going to be gone longer, I'll get an Uber reserve, and then they'll reimburse me. I have transportation for me at the ship's airport, and if they don't pick me up at the port in a limo, like one of those vans, I get an Uber. They pay for my airfare. I get $25 per diem, and I just got off a ship on November 2nd in Galveston, the Jubilation, and I got to spend all day going to the biker rally there, going to a nice lunch, walking for like 6 miles up and down the beach, going for a seafood dinner, and they put me up in a beautiful place. They paid for it, and they paid for my Uber to the ship. The next day, a different ship in the same port. And then when you're on board, when I play comedy clubs, if you're not a draw, if you can get 50 people on a Saturday night, the club owner's happy. You know, and some clubs, if they pay for the room, you got 120 people, and that's great. In a comedy club on the cruise ship, Carnival, When you play the other cruise lines, you're playing in a theater. You have anywhere from 500 to 1,500 people in there for your shows. And when you're playing a Carnival Comedy Club, the Punchliner is the name of their brand. You've got 300 people in there, 200 people in there packed every show. Even the
Oh,
matinees, they
ideal.
do matinees at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, PG. It's 400 people. And then you do the
Wow.
theater, there's 1,000 people. So once you get skilled, you learn how to coordinate with the hosts to get them to minimize the things they do to ruin your show. You build a
Mhm.
rapport with them. So you ask them, talk like this, introduce me like this. Don't get the audience crazy. Stay on the stage till I come up.
Yeah.
Don't let the sound guy put the lights in play the walk-off music and bring the house lights on the moment I say goodnight. Wait, and helping them make with little suggestions. The more you get to learn with these people, the more you convince them that you know what you're doing, and they'll want to help you. But you have to learn all that stuff. And so once you go up there and kick butt, when you're on a cruise ship and you learn how to do it, I mean, it's like you're a draw in a club.
Hmm.
I mean, you got
Yeah.
500 people in there and you're destroying for
Yeah,
half
and
an
there's word
hour.
of mouth on the ship, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you get to eat for free, and you get to sightsee, and you get to meet people, and they buy you drinks, and then you take pictures, and you meet little kids, and they tell you jokes, and people love your show. And there's people there that are cruising without their family because they died, or old people with back pain, and they're trying to get away, and you bring happiness to people. But the thing is you have to have the chops because it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But the thing is once you learn it and figure it out, it's worth it because you have the best shows ever. It just takes a while to figure it out.
Do you
So,
have somebody said a friend of ours, Greg Dean, said that he had a friend who does cruise ships and he's also writing his screenplay at the same time, like
yeah, you
when
got
he's on the
plenty of
ship.
time to
So you
work
have
during the.
time to do other things as well that
Oh,
that might develop
absolutely.
your career.
Greg Dean's book, Comedy Writing Step by Step, is one that I recommend to many
Yeah,
young comics. And I actually met him at the Lancaster
he's a great guy.
Antelope Valley Comedy Festival a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's been on the show twice. Do you have any other books that you recommend people for writing comedy?
Oh, yeah. Uh, do you have your internet there?
Yeah.
Look it up as I say. Writing Comedy That Kills by Steve something,
Okay.
and then the Comedy Bible by Judy Carter, the
Oh yeah,
newest one,
she's great. She's been on the show as
is my
well.
favorite.
Yeah.
And then there's
Okay.
look up Adam Bloom, the name of his book.
So How
He's a
to Kill It Comedy, Steve North was the one I
Steve
think
North,
that
and then
Steve
look at
North.
Adam Bloom. Adam Bloom, Finding Your Comic Genius, I think it's called.
Adam Bloom. Is it Bloom, you think?
Yeah, yeah, Bloom. I think Finding Your Comic Genius, I think it's called.
Finding Your Comic Genius. Yeah, Adam Bloom. So there we
Adam
go.
Bloom, and you can put
Yeah.
those in the show notes, I guess, or
Yeah, I
whatever.
will. Sure.
And then
There's
another
Adam.
one is, yeah, that's it right there.
Mhm.
And then a comedian used to work for me on Carnival. His name is Mike Lucas with a K, Mikeluks, not Lucs.
Uh-huh.
He has 3 books in a series, and it's called like Flexing Your Funny Muscle is the first one,
Okay.
and he has 3 already. The first one I think is called Flexing or is Finding Your Funny Muscle or Flexing Your
Hmm.
Funny Muscle.
Okay.
There's 3 of them.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Finding Your Funny Muscle, Mike Lucas.
Yeah,
There you
and
go.
that's a very there's another one. Playfully Inappropriate. Look that up.
Okay.
Playfully Inappropriate.
There it is. Oh yeah. Jared Vole. That
Yeah,
one?
there we go. Those are all the books that I recommend the most.
Okay, cool.
And I can actually, if you guys are trying to figure out like this, do you know who Jeffrey Asmus is?
No. Should I?
Well, look him up. He's a great comedian. He's the best comedian right now that you can look at that is personifies this approach to comedy. This guy, Jared Voles, he talks about how, how comedy is supposed to be crossing the line.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be a little bit offensive, But like, what's the difference? That's Jeffrey Asmus. What's the difference between crossing the line?
Mm-hmm.
And so a joke really isn't funny unless it's inappropriate. But
Mm-hmm.
if you include enough information and write the joke specifically enough that accentuates the fact that you're playing and that
Mm-hmm.
you really do mean it tongue in cheek, the
Yeah.
more successful your bits will do. And it helps you
That makes sense.
identify
Yeah.
what missing elements you have. Like, for example, that joke Tony Hinchcliffe did
Mm-hmm.
about
Yeah.
Puerto
Rico.
Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a joke which I consider to be playfully inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this guy said to his family on the plane, "Hey, everybody, get your passports out because that way we can get through immigration and customs faster." I said, "Sir, you don't need your passports. We don't go through immigration in Puerto Rico." He goes, "What are you talking about? It's a different country." I know, it's part of America. I go, "We're going from America to America." In fact, Puerto Rico is just as American as New York City or Miami, just with fewer Puerto Ricans. Now, see, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
inappropriate, but it's
Yeah.
playful.
Yeah.
Whereas the Tony Hinchcliffe one wasn't playful.
Yeah.
He actually took the audience at face value, thinking
Yeah.
they were going to be cretins,
Mm-hmm.
laughing at that low-based
Yeah.
humor that Trump does,
Yeah.
and he misgauged it. He did what was right for the room. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't do that joke for the people watching on the news. He did the
Right.
people, but he underestimated the class of the people at that particular rally.
Mm-hmm.
And it also
Mm-hmm.
was out of place. They didn't know who he was, and they had no
Yeah.
business doing comedy at 10 in the morning.
Well, I
So
always
anyway,
say that too, is that if it's mean-spirited, then it's inappropriate in a bad way. But if it's not
right.
mean-spirited, if you're making a joke, like, um, there's a lot of comedy roasts that go on and things like that. But then when people talk about Don Rickles, who used to roast people, that was his whole act, and he would roast people to their face. He had a playfulness about him, and also everybody said he was the nicest guy ever.
And can you put up the Comedy That Kills?
Yeah, yeah.
Put that one up.
Put that one up. Comedy That Kills.
Okay. And also one of my favorites is Greg Dean's book. You can flash that one too, or whatever.
Yes.
That's one of the best ones to start because you learn basic joke structure.
Yeah, it's so good.
So, Comedy That Kills.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
That guy's whole thesis is that you have to have a comedy character. That every good comedian has a point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And his comedic character is defined by that character's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
that character's flaw,
mm-hmm.
that character's blind spot, and his humility. What's good about him, and those blended together. And then Mike Lucas and his Finding Your Flexing, I forgot what he calls it, but it's comedy point of view or something he calls it, your comedy identity or something. That it's basically like a log line you to describe your comic lens, your comedian lens. Like say Bill Burr is an angry guy who thinks everybody's stupid, and then say Jerry Seinfeld is a guy who talks about the mundane things and treats them as they're important. So everybody has a comedic lens through which they view the world, and that's what helps generate their comedy. That's kind of what, and the Finding Your Funny Muscle gives a lot of how to use. He delineates a whole arsenal of different comedic techniques, joke writing techniques, and performance techniques, and how to use each to the best effect to help create material through your comic lens. And then finding your comedy that kills.
Yeah.
A good example of that approach. Do you ever watch the Daily Show?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you know how all of the when the correspondents do a bit about something, and they're totally getting it wrong, and they're coming from a very ignorant point of view.
Yeah.
To make a point.
Yeah.
That's like finding a comedic character and then putting that material through. So he's like being a bigot, like Archie Bunker was a bigot
Yeah.
but you're actually making fun of bigotry through that character.
Yes.
You know, and then of course Greg Dean is all about basic one-liner structure, and then a brilliant book. And then another one is Judy Carter's. It's all about, you know, comedy premises. People think premise is a topic. No, a premise is an insight in the human condition, you know, that it can teach other people how to deal with things, you know, a shared experience about an observation about life and what things mean. And so when you so what you do is you write jokes to help prove your premise, and you use act outs and other comedic tools to advance your premise. And like what goes back to what I was saying before, having comedy be about something. And that this book really was the first one that showed me how to do that. And then of course the ones I read back in the day were Comedy Writing Secrets by Professor Melvin Helitzer. Drew Carey bought me my first copy of that in 1987.
Really?
And then another one is all of Jean Perret's books. I used to belong to the Writers Roundtable. Jean Perret. Bob Hope's head writer. But my computer is going to die here because I didn't hook up the...
Okay. Well, one last question from the audience. Did you ever meet Jane Lynch? Joel's afraid to ask you.
No.
She's a doll. She would
I'd like to.
She would love you. She's a great person.
If I did meet her, she'd go, "You are the weakest link. You are the weakest link. Goodbye."
Totally. Gina says we're twins. Yeah, almost. Luckily. All right. So thanks so much for being on the show. Sorry your computer's dying. We drained your battery, but it's been really fantastic and such a wealth of information. Anybody out there that saw this, please pass it around. And thanks for taking the time, because I know you're really super busy. And,
thanks, man. I gotta go take a breath. I can talk, can't
I? Yeah, you could talk. You can talk, and it's actually, I mean, it's all gold coming out of your mouth. Let's face it. I'm going to do this thing called a dance break where I play a cover song from YouTube, and this is a pretty damn good one. But you can go off as you want. But I really appreciate having you on the show, and I know all the viewers do too. So thanks,
I'll
Jeff.
stay on to my... So what happened was I had my computer set up in the other room in front of the TV for working.
Yeah.
But I do like Zoom shows in here with my lights and microphone. Yeah. So I just ran over here with my laptop and didn't bring my cord.
Oh yeah,
I'm going back to the easy chair to finish an episode of Shameless and finish some booking emails.
Oh, awesome.
Thanks, Jose.
Jake Cantillon says, "Hey, Joel Marshall, thanks for keeping up the laughs." Yeah, there's amazing stuff in this interview.
And then send me a good link so I can, and any like thumbnail or flyer that I can promote this episode on social media.
All right, thanks, Jeff. And you can also chop it up however you wish too. If you want to take a piece of something you said and put it somewhere, please do.
Okay.
All right, dance break time.
What's up, kumquats? We're 2 minutes to late night,
These
and we're here
amazing.
with the other half of Baroness that hasn't been on the show yet. If you're wondering why we're dressed like Tame Impala going to a baby shower, it's because we're about to take you on a trip back to the swingin' 70s. Except for Captain Mullet over here. He always looks like that. Today we're going to be covering the best song by a band that rocked so hard they named a city after them. Boston. Hit it, Wahlburgers!
Thanks so much for being here. Check out these people on YouTube. They're amazing. We'll see y'all next week.